Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today on a topic that's pretty much everywhere you look these days. It's AI and how it's impacting, well, everything really, but especially the financial markets.
Yeah, no kidding. It's definitely the hot topic.
For sure. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a conversation between financial expert Jim Rickards and Hedgeye CEO Keith McCullough.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. That was a good one.
Definitely. These guys aren't just hyping up AI. They're like really getting into how it works and how it could really change the game when it comes to finance. I mean, think about it. What happens when markets can crash at the speed of thought? That's the kind of stuff they're talking about.
Gets you thinking. Right. It's pretty wild.
Totally. So one of the things that Rickards lays out in his book, Money GPT, is this fictional but, totally believable scenario where AI actually triggers a market meltdown.
Right. Yeah, he calls it the AI-powered market meltdown. It's kind of a catchy title.
It is, and it kind of grabs your attention. So walk us through this scenario, what's actually happening.
Well, he's got all these key players, right? Like there's this family office, and they've got this super sophisticated AI assistant that's managing all their investments.
Okay, so already we're talking about some serious money here.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Then you've got these hedge fund veterans, basically these old school guys who are looking to manipulate the market, the usual
Yeah, we've
suspects.
got to have those guys in the mix, right?
Exactly. And then to make things even more interesting, there's a Chinese cyber warfare unit trying to sow chaos and destabilize things.
Oh, wow. So it's like an international incident waiting to happen.
Right. And to top it all off, you've got the Fed chair who's completely clueless about what's going on.
Oh, man. So it's like a recipe for disaster, right? Like all these different forces colliding.
Yeah, it's not just one bad actor. It's like this whole tangled web of AI-driven actions and, unintended consequences.
Right. And that's what Rickards keeps emphasizing. It's not like some evil mastermind pulling the strings. It's the chaotic nature of all these interconnected AI systems that makes it so unpredictable and potentially, catastrophic.
Exactly. You've got deep fakes, eroding trust, AI-powered trading systems going haywire, and just this general lack of human oversight.
So the question is, what happens to regular investors, you and me, in this kind of scenario?
Right, so good
It's
question.
like, say you've done all your research, you've got your solid investment strategy, and then boom, the market tanks because everyone else is using the same AI-powered
Yeah,
approach.
you're sunk, basically.
That's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It is, and that's where this concept of the fallacy of composition comes in. Rickards and McCullough spent a lot of time on this idea.
Okay, break that down for us. What is that exactly?
Well, it basically means that what might be a winning strategy for one person, right, if everybody tries to do it at the same time, it becomes a disaster.
Oh, I see. So it's like if one person stands up at a baseball game to get a better view, it works. But if everybody stands up, nobody can see.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Now think about that, but on a massive scale, with thousands of AI systems,
Yeah.
all making the same trades at the same time.
Wow. So it's like pouring gasoline on a market fire?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can create this huge bubble that just bursts in spectacular fashion.
That's scary stuff. This whole scenario kind of reminds me of the Silicon Valley bank collapse a while back.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Like 1 minute, everything seemed fine, and then the next, it was all over the news. This huge bank just
I
collapsing.
mean, what was really crazy was how quickly all those traditional financial safeguards, like the things that are supposed to protect us, just went out the window.
It was like they didn't even matter anymore.
Yeah, and then there was all that talk about, what was it, Crybaby Weekend, where all these powerful players were putting pressure on the government for a bailout.
They didn't want to lose their money, did they?
Nope. And the government ended up backstopping the entire system.
Well, that's not really fair, is it?
And that's what McCullough's talking about when he brings up moral hazard. Like, if everyone knows they're going to get bailed out no matter what, they're going to take bigger risks.
It just makes the whole system less stable in the long run.
Yeah, it does. And it makes you wonder, what does this all mean for the future of traditional finance?
Seriously, it's definitely food for thought. And this whole situation ties into another idea that Rickards talks about, this concept of moneyness.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
He's basically saying it's not just about dollars and cents, it's about this underlying trust
Yeah.
that gives money its value.
Right, it's got to have that backing, that belief that it's actually worth something.
And he's saying that trust is eroding and fast.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We use credit cards, Venmo, Apple Pay. It's all digital. We're kind of losing touch with the fact that there's real value behind those transactions.
It's like we're becoming detached from the reality of money. It's just numbers on a screen.
Exactly. And that makes us more vulnerable. Like if people lose faith in the system, if that moneyness disappears, poof, the value of our money could just vanish.
And then what? Where do people turn when they don't trust the system anymore? We'll have to explore that and more next time as we continue our deep dive. So, where do people turn when they lose faith in, like, the traditional financial system?
Well, Rickards, he thinks this is where alternative forms of value start to, they start to come into play.
Okay, so what, like Bitcoin and all that?
Well, he talks a lot about gold and silver.
Oh, the
Yeah,
classics.
and land too, things that have like intrinsic value outside of that, digital financial system.
Makes sense. I mean, it's like they say, safe as houses, right?
Exactly. These assets, these tangible assets, they've kind of historically held their value during times of economic turmoil, like those rough patches.
Yeah, when everything else is going crazy.
Right, exactly. And he's not saying everyone needs to like, go full on gold bug, buy up all the gold you can find.
Right, gotta have a balanced portfolio.
Exactly. But he does think having at least some of your wealth in assets that aren't part of the digital world, that can be a good buffer, in
Right.
case of a crisis.
Yeah, kind of like an insurance policy against a system meltdown.
Precisely. And that's where the conversation about cryptocurrencies comes in.
Oh, yeah, right. Because crypto is like often seen as that decentralized alternative, right, to traditional finance.
Uh-huh. And it's really appealing to, especially younger generations who are like, they've grown up in this digital world.
They're digital natives.
Exactly. But even with crypto, Rickards is cautious. He says don't go all in on any single asset class.
So diversification is still key.
Absolutely, no matter what you're investing in. Remember that fallacy of composition we were talking about?
Yeah, where if everyone does the same thing, it backfires.
Right. Same principle applies here. It's not just about crypto. It's about everything.
Gotcha. So we've talked about the problem, this erosion of moneyness, and how AI could make things even more unstable. But like, what are some potential solutions here? What can be done to like mitigate these risks?
Well, Rickards, he throws out a couple of ideas. One of them he calls cybernetics.
Cybernetics. That sounds pretty intense.
It's kind of based on the analogy of a ship's helmsman, constantly making these adjustments to stay on course.
Oh, okay. So instead of those like blunt instruments like circuit breakers.
Right. The ones that basically slam the brakes on the entire market.
Yeah, those are pretty drastic.
He's suggesting a more kind of, nuanced approach. Like think of pumping the brakes on an icy road. You don't want to slam on them and spin out.
You got to be careful.
Exactly. You just make these small, controlled adjustments to slow things down gradually.
So in the market, that would be like maybe slowing down the flow of orders. If there's a sudden drop, give everyone a chance to, breathe, see what's going on.
Exactly. Create a little breathing room so it doesn't turn into a full-blown panic,
Yeah. Makes sense. It's like building shock absorbers into the system.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So cybernetics is one idea. And he also talks about the importance of regulation, like the rules of the game.
Yeah, because right now it seems like the technology is way ahead of the regulations.
He says regulators need to catch up, basically, to the speed of all this tech change and come up with new rules that actually deal with the challenges of AI in the markets.
So not just reacting after a crisis, but getting ahead of the curve?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that AI, it's a tool, right? It can be used for good or bad.
It's how you use it.
And we need those guidelines, those regulations to make sure it's used responsibly,
That makes a lot of sense. There's one more thing I wanted to touch on before we, wrap things up. And it's something Rickards and McCullough discuss. It's about AI and nuclear warfighting.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy topic.
Definitely. I mean, the idea of AI being involved in those kinds of decisions that could have like, world-ending consequences, it's pretty unsettling. And Rickards points out that there's all this pressure to incorporate AI into the nuclear kill chain, which is basically like the process of launching nuclear weapons.
I mean, it sounds efficient, right? In theory.
I guess so, but Rickards is saying that's incredibly dangerous because AI doesn't have that, like, human element of abductive logic.
Right. That ability to understand the context, to see the big picture.
Like those examples we talked about earlier, Stanislav Petrov and Lieutenant General Leonard Perutz, they both averted potential nuclear disasters by, like, going against what the computers were telling them.
They trusted their guts, basically.
In those situations, their gut was right.
It's like in those moments, it's not about following the rules. It's about understanding the spirit of the rules.
And knowing when to break them.
Exactly. And that's why Rickards is really, really cautious about putting AI in charge of those nuclear decisions.
Too much at stake.
He thinks the risks are just, way too high.
It's a lot to think about, the role of technology and how much control we give it, especially when it comes to those like life or death decisions. But we'll delve into all of that and more next time in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we've talked about AI causing market meltdowns, moneyness disappearing, and even AI making decisions about, well, nuclear war. But there's this one thing, this concept of abductive logic that we need to really dig into.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
So abductive logic, it's kind of like that gut feeling, right? That intuition, like when you just know something's right or wrong, even if you can't explain why.
Yeah, it's like that aha moment. You connect the dots, you see the bigger picture.
And Rickards is saying that this abductive logic, it's what makes us, human. It's what separates us from even the most advanced AI.
He gives that great example of the 5-year-olds drawing a circle. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. The AI is trying to figure out all these calculations and formulas.
And the kids are just like, hey, look, a teapot. They use the bottom of the teapot to trace a perfect circle.
It's like they instinctively know how to solve the problem without overthinking it.
Exactly. And the AI is stuck in its own, rigid way of thinking.
So if we can't program this abductive logic into AI, does that mean there's a limit to how smart machines can get?
It's a big question, right?
Yeah.
Can AI ever really be, truly intelligent like humans if it doesn't have that intuition?
Because it's like those stories about Stanislav Petrov and Lieutenant General Leonard Perutz, they basically saved the world by ignoring what the computers were telling them.
Yeah, those situations, the computers were saying, launch the nukes.
It's crazy to think about.
But those guys, they trusted their gut, and thank goodness they did.
Those were moments where human judgment, that abductive logic, was more important than any algorithm.
It's a good reminder that even in this world where it feels like everything's becoming automated, our judgment, our intuition, it still matters a lot.
Especially when the stakes are so high.
Exactly. So as we move forward with all this AI stuff, it's important to remember that technology is a tool, right?
It's not a replacement for us, for our thinking.
And AI, it can be a great tool, but it can also amplify our biases, our mistakes. We got to be careful.
So after this whole deep dive, what are the main takeaways for, the average person?
Well, first of all, don't be scared of AI, right? It's powerful, but it's not perfect. Always remember that.
Don't just believe everything it tells you.
Question it, look for different perspectives, and most importantly, trust your gut, that intuition. That's still our superpower.
It's about taking back control, in a world where it feels like technology is controlling everything.
It's about realizing that we're still in charge, even with all this AI stuff going on.
So as we keep exploring this whole AI thing, let's stay curious, keep asking questions, and most importantly, stay human.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.